This episode is brought to you by Sabio, the #1 coding bootcamp for veterans. Visit sabio.la/military to learn more. And welcome to Fast Take. I'm Rod Rodriguez.
I'm Jack Murphy.
And we are here talking about the last episode, Special Forces Assessment. Jack, tell us about that story and your guest.
Yeah, so I interviewed Dr. David Walton, really interesting guy, served in Special Forces himself, still works down at Fort Bragg. And I believe his PhD is in education. So he has a unique background and insight. And he did some studies on Special Forces assessment and selection. And that included going and observing current courses that are running. And he also had access to all of the historical data back to when SFAS first began. I think it was like in 1988 or something like that. So all of that data he had, the books were open to him. And he, arrived at some interesting conclusions. And I thought it was very interesting to hear. I guess we could call it, we could say the counter argument, the counter narrative. Because, I've written stories on this as well over the years. There have been accusations that standards are slipping. Goes back to previous conversations we've had that the military is too woke, that, they've gone soft, that they're trying to push female soldiers through for political reasons. So they're having lower standards for that. I've heard all of these accusations and we've all seen them. Those of us who are in the military community, people who listen to this podcast certainly are a part of that and have seen the social media posts and everything else. As a reporter, it's been very interesting for me in the sense that I have definitely written stories about this. There was that letter that was mass blasted out to SOCOM, and I'm actually the one who published that letter publicly many years ago now. And yeah, they weren't too happy about me doing that, but nonetheless, it was important to address that. And there's a lot of specific information in there. And I wish some of these commands had addressed the specifics in that letter, point by point a long time ago. But Dr. Walton does. He went through all the information, all the data, and, his conclusion was that at the end of the day, there really isn't any bias being shown in SFAS, and that standards have not slipped. That the average graduation rate goes up and down a little bit here and there over the years, but it's not been a significant increase or decrease. So what he's saying is that these soldiers are meeting the standard and the same standard that they've been meeting for decades. And that alone, ironically, that may be the most controversial possible finding.
If you're looking to make a career change or still trying to find your path outside the military, I recommend checking out Sabio, the coding bootcamp and developer community that's helped so many veterans become successful software engineers. Sabio teaches you the skills to start a real high-paying tech job in just 17 weeks, online and from the comfort of your own home. Visit sabio.la/military to learn how you can use your VA benefits to enroll. That's sabio.la/military. I was in a room full of retired Green Berets when that night letter made its rounds. And I was in the room with these guys, and it was almost like all of us, you could hear the collective blink when it showed up on our emails. We're like, oh, really? What is this? And I read it, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. Holy smokes, man. That room was just like all work stopped. I'm telling you, like for about 2 hours, there was no analysis coming out of that cell. I just listened to, and I'm not going to say they were raving because that's not what they do, man. There was concern. Raving. I think there was some word watching too. That was interesting to me too, because like they were angry about certain parts of it. Some agreed with some stuff, some didn't agree with it. But everybody had an opinion, and there was some word watching. Some folks were very careful about like what they were saying, because you just never know who's listening, especially in those environments. Like it was odd. Now I will say I am not, and I've made this very clear. We talk a lot about special forces and special operations. I've been I've had the privilege of working with very elite people. I am not one of those elite people. I have gone to SFAS. I've climbed the mountain, folks. I climbed the mountain 3 times. And the third time, they took me like a Spartan baby and turned me over and deemed me unfit and threw me off the top of the cliff. They were like, no, this one is disgusting. Yeah,
Well,
I'm one of those.
I actually made it through SFAS, but I think they want to do that to me now. It tossed me off the cliff.
The last episode we were talking about abortion, and if they could go back and abort Mr. Murphy's career.
Oh yeah,
like Terminator style, like send somebody into the past to destroy him before he could tab up. But it's interesting to me because I'm one of those, I don't know, like 30 days, but either way, I finished. I'm very grateful. And I'll tell you, Jack, that SFAS, I did it 3 times. The first 2 times I got through, first 2 times I got through Team Week. But they had done some weird timeline reversals. So we did Team Week and then we did something else. I got hurt in Team Week both times near the end. And I was almost finished. The third time I finish it. And I will tell you, I have kids, and I think everyone's probably sick and tired of me talking about my kids by now, but I've got kids in service. I got 1 soldier, 1 Marine now, and now I have an airman. I tell my young soldier all the time, go to SFAS. Even if you're not sure about, go to SFAS. Dr. Walton said it great in the episode when he talked about what's the purpose of SFAS. And it's to find out who you really are. Who's the real you? And that real you is revealed when you're tired, your body's breaking down, you're exhausted, under high stress. All these things kind of bring out who's Jack Murphy, who's Rod. And I tell my kid all the time, like, go to SFAS and you will discover who you really are. Who's the real you? Are you the complainer? Are you the crier? Are you the woe is me? We all think we have what it takes to get through stuff until it's time to get through stuff. And then you discover, like, can I really carry this rucksack another 8 clicks? Can I really hold this end of the down pilot? Oh, Jesus, I have nightmares about down pilot.
I went in 2005, came off a deployment to Iraq. So 3 months, the summer of 2005, came back to the States, got sucked into doing airfield seizure training exercises for like 2.5 weeks. And the day after we finished, I was on a plane down to Fayetteville, started SFAS the next day. Like, I will tell you, by the time SFAS was done, I was done. Like, I was just physically and mentally completely done by the end of that course.
Oh, 100%. 100%, dude. 100%. When I finished, and then I had, so at least you passed. At least you were selected. I remember they were calling out numbers and they were leaving. And we're all in the auditorium. And I'm like, please don't call my number, because I know what that means. I know what's happening. It's the culling. It's the great culling is what they're doing. And I hear my number called and look at my buddy who was next to me. We went through the whole process together, and he looked at me with this sadness, like, I'm so sorry. And I'm like, oh no.
Well, yeah, when I went through, they had 2 lists they'd put up on the wall. And they're like, okay, if you're on this list, you go over there. If you're on this list, you go over there. And that was kind of how people found out.
Oh, no. They called us out. And so we're in the big, the big auditorium,
Yeah.
The biggest one, the bigger one. Okay. We were all in there, and they call out your number, and then you walk out, and there's a guy, one of the cadres, like, go into this other room. So you have the big auditorium. You walk across that little field, and then there's like that classroom style thing. It's like a smaller auditorium. It's like a smaller room.
I think I remember that.
And that's where we all took the MDMP and all this other crap. When we had testing, that's where it was done. We all go in there. There was no chairs, nothing. It was dark. They didn't turn the light. There was like one light, one cadre member, and we're all walking in there. We look around. He looks at us and goes, "You all know it. You all know why you're in here, right?" I'm like, "Yeah."
Oh, that's
All
a
right,
bitter
guys,
pill.
listen.
Yeah.
And, it gets better. Jack, he's telling us like, "All right, you're going to get a counseling before you leave. You're going to sit down with one of the cadre. They're going to talk to you about what happened. They're going to give you quick AR. They're going to hear your side of this, but it's done. Thank you for coming. Blah blah blah." And while he's giving us the death knell speech, you can hear on the other side, "Yay!" Because some, yeah, yeah, they're celebrating over there, man. They're like, "We're
Oh
gonna be
man.
Green Berets," and we're all sitting there like, "No, I'm gonna try not to kill myself tonight. If you don't kill yourself," we're like, "Yeah, okay,
Failure when your
that's a
best
death
just isn't good enough.
Sometimes it just isn't, right? But and that's good though, right? You know, at the time, I was like, man, I was pretty angry with myself. I thought, man, I suck at life, and maybe I did. And some of you are probably thinking like, "Whoa, oh, he failed SFAS. That explains it. That explains everything." Piece of shit. But that's fine. Explains so much. It was the right call. I will tell you, looking back on it, it was the right call. I don't think I would have been a very good Green Beret. I don't think I would have been a good Special Forces guy. I am an intel dude by trade. I love the world of intelligence. I love what I do. I don't think I would have been a good Ranger or Special Forces guy. I think physically I made it, but that doesn't mean I would have been a good Special Forces guy. I don't want to say operator because that word's misused so many times, but I don't think I would have been a good Green Beret. Not the right fit for old Rod, and not the right fit for everybody. In this episode, you talked a lot about women, and women have been a source of much controversy when it comes to SFAS. And I believe that's what that night letter had a lot to do with as well, were the standards of, who's being pushed through, who's not being pushed through, standards being dropped. What came out of this interview? What surprised you?
I think that none of it is necessarily shocking. I mean, it's more like a breath of relief, really, after you hear all these stories about standard slipping. Some of the insights that David teased out was about he points out that women have a significantly higher failure rate in SFAS than men. They looked at it and they haven't found that there's a bias from the instructors or that they're being like discriminated against. But the reality is that in a physical course like SFAS, where you carry heavy weights for prolonged periods of time, people who have smaller bodies are at a disadvantage, right? It's not fair, right? There's an aspect of it that none of this is fair. If I'm 6 foot tall, I weigh 175, 180 pounds, I have an advantage over dude who is 5'3". And a guy who is 6'4" and weighs 240, 250 has an advantage over me, because that rucksack is 50 pounds for all three of us, right? They're not changing the weight, they're not gender norming the weight or the standards, right, in the course. So, women don't do as well on average as the guys do. There have only been a couple female graduates of the course. He did find that in instances there was a bias shown by the male candidates towards the female candidates, that they actually tried to help them more during events, during SFAS. Because that's like how they were socialized, is that like, oh, if you see a woman struggling, you should try to help them, right? So he said he saw some of that. But overall the standards are being maintained, and it seems like they're getting good candidates through SFAS. So I thought all of that was like quite interesting. It's quite interesting to hear that the graduation rates are more or less the same since SFAS, since its inception.
There was a story not too long ago about a woman Green Beret who had an accidental discharge in her house.
Oh, I wrote that story.
She was cleaning her weapon. Oh, that was you. You seem familiar, Jack. Tell us a little bit about that, because I think that has some relevance. Because I know here's the thing. I know somebody sitting there going, women in the military. You know, you're probably sitting there drinking your chauvinistic juice, thinking women suck and they shouldn't be in the military, much less in special forces. And this is one of the stories that's probably come to mind. Like, you know, there was an accidental discharge and she's a Green Beret. But at the same time, that made stories. Jack, I assume you wrote that story because it was one of the few women as a Green Beret that had an accident. I mean, that's kind of an interesting deal. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I also wrote the story back when they first started letting women into Ranger School about the one who showed up pregnant. Ooh, that made a little bit of a stir, a little spicy story there. People weren't so happy with your pal Jack. But you know, it's not because I'm anti.
I can hear it. I can hear the Terminator coming through time right now to destroy your career.
You know, it's not because I'm against women going through these courses. I think it's admirable to them to even show up. Really, I mean, they're trying to challenge themselves just like the male candidates who go through these courses that are challenging. But you know, back to some of our previous conversations. Like, I'm a reporter, so I report the news, and it's not. I also can't, you know, be prejudiced in the other direction, right? And just handle students with or certain candidates with kid gloves because they're female, right? So yeah, this happened. First female Green Beret had an accidental discharge in her apartment, and yeah, that happened. And you know, they handled it at the unit level, I guess. No, but yeah, before people get on their bandwagon and start talking about like how horrible a person she is or something, I mean, I'm not going to mention any names. I'm just saying my buddy may have had an accidental discharge with his HK-USP in his home when we were going through the course and blown through a couple walls in his house. I'm not going to mention any names, but my roommate who lived next door to me in fifth group, may or may not have accidentally discharged his 357 Magnum through his laptop and into his coffee table one evening. And your buddy Jack may have come and knocked on the door, and it opened like 3 inches, and I see this guy's face, and he's like, I fucked up. And I go in there, and I'm like, holy shit, what happened here? There's like gun smoke, there's like cordite in the air, there's like wood chips everywhere. I'm like, what the hell happened here, man? And he opens up his laptop and shows me there's a nice crisp bullet hole right through the screen. And he's like, what do we do? What do I do? I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I don't know what I do. And I'm like, well, hope that nobody calls the cops on you, first of all. The bullet lodged in his coffee table, so no one got hurt, thank God. So I was like, I'm going to tell you what we're going to do. You're going to clean up all of this shit, and then you're going to get in the car with me, and I'm going to drive you down to Applebee's, and we're going to get drunk off our ass at the bar.
and that's the point, folks, is like when woman shows up to Ranger training pregnant,
knocked up.
Yeah, I get it. She knocked up. But true story, guys, when I was going through SFAS, we had to write an essay, believe it or not. Had to write an essay, a little piece of paper in the wood line. And it was, why do I want to be a Green Beret? And the guy next to me wrote, because chicks dig Green Berets. And I remember, because he looked at me, he's like, dude, check it out. He's being funny, right? Automatic fail. Like, we submitted them. The cadre was looking through them, and they call up my guy's number. He goes over there, and I know it's because of this, because the cadre had the paper in his hand, and he's like, and I could see him like blah 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 blah. He's pointing at the paper, and the guy's at parade rest. He's like, points out, get out of here, get out, candidate. You're done. Get in the van, and kicked him out. And then they have a chat with us. They're like, let me tell you some candidates. if you think you're here because chicks dig Green Berets, you're wrong. That's not why you should be here. Blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, what a moron. So people show up. He may not have shown up pregnant, but he showed up stupid, which I don't know, probably worse than being pregnant. At least maybe she didn't know she was pregnant, or if she thought, hey, I could do this with the baby.
She didn't know that she was pregnant. Like it had just happened before she.
Why would she? That's crazy. Unless she wanted to double tab. Like, hey, technically the little man is tabbed up too. Let's get him. Hook him up. But I think that's the point. Is stories are stories because of who they are about. To Jack's point, if no one's going to write a story about some, guy that had an accidental discharge in his house. I mean, it happens all the time. People do dumb stuff. It doesn't make the news. It'll make the blotter, but it won't make the news. So we look at this, and I'm all about equal opportunity. Everybody deserves deserves a shot at hating life as much as the next guy. So, Jack, what are your final thoughts on this?
Final thoughts. I mean, I think it's going to take a while for this message to get out there. And honest to God, I think a lot of the Green Beret community, the Special Forces community out there is going to have, a pretty strong reaction. I think ironically, they're going to be really upset to have a subject matter expert saying, no, actually the standards have been maintained. And I think it's going to cause some anger. Of course, the intent, my intent and Dr. Walton's intent is not to cause anger. But as he says, he hopes people will actually come to him and look at this information for themselves and maybe it'll change their mind.
Agreed. 100% agree. Folks, you can, check out more stories from Stars and Stripes. Go to stripes.com, use promo code podcast, get 50% off your digital subscription. As always, you can find me and Jack hanging out in the Twitterverse while it exists. Elon is personally dismantling. Yeah, before it collapses. Otherwise, we will be on your next right-wing, left-wing platform, whatever it might be. But I'm sure you could find Jack at Jack Murphy RGR. You can always find me on the Twitterverses at RodPodRod. And as always, you can follow us at Stripes Pod for your latest and greatest on what's going on in the podcast world of Stripes. And you can find Stars and Stripes everywhere on the social medias, on the streams. And check this out, folks. Check it out. You can now listen to the show on YouTube. Yes, cool. You're not getting the video. Not yet. We're not getting the video stuff yet. But if you're at a government computer, which you very well might be, and you can't access podcasts on government computers, but everybody knows the general loves his YouTube, so the YouTube will stay on. The spigot is on. The flip is still the switch is still flipped, so you will be able to go on YouTube. Stars and Stripes, check out their YouTube channel, and you will be able to listen to this podcast from your government computer. So make sure you waste as much government time as you can. This is a great way to kill that spreadsheet time when you're doing data entry. Get a little Stars and Stripes
information safety awareness online training modules.
Oh, your 200 hours of online training. Or if you're writing your night letter to special forces and special operations, maybe you're listening to Military Matters while you write your night letter.
As you write Jack Murphy a email at jackmurphyreporter@protonmail.com. Slide on in there, folks.
Get them before the Terminator does.
Special Ops Command loves to hear from you.
Oh, Jesus. Folks, that was Jack Murphy. Get him while he's hot. Get him before the T-1000 comes back and destroys him. Folks, I'm Rod Rodriguez. That was Jack Murphy, and we will see you at the next episode. Be sure to check us out on social media. We're on Twitter at StripesMMPod. And if you have a tip or story idea, shoot us an email at militarymatters@stripes.com. And don't forget, you can get 50% off your digital subscription to Stars and Stripes today. Just use promo code PODCAST and get 50% off your digital subscription. That's promo code PODCAST. This episode is brought to you by Sabio, the #1 coding bootcamp for veterans. Visit sabio.la/military to learn more. Thank you for listening. I'm Rod Rodriguez.
I'm Jack Murphy.
And we'll see you at the next episode.